Yes, I wanted to give you just a little bit of information to help you with the Ibn Rushd text analysis for your discussion and also for the second exam. This will be important. So first of all, the author, Ibn Rushd, was a jurist. He was actually a qadi, a judge, who died in 1126 in Cordoba in southern Spain. He's his his grandson is the Ibn Rushd, Averroes, who would become not only a judge but also an extremely influential and famous philosopher in the Greek tradition. So this is actually if you look up Ibn Rushd in Wikipedia or something like that, you're most likely to hit upon the grandson of our man, as he's far more famous. But this Ibn Rushd has the advantage of having written a major and extremely important primer for jurists, the Bidayat al-Mujtahid, which we can just translate as the jurist primer, or the beginning of the first step of the Mujtahid. And it's basically, you can think of it as almost like a textbook written for jurists in his period in the late 11th, early 12th century. And so I assigned you just a few pages of the translation on the section in the broader section on foods and beverages, and on the subsection of intoxicants. So I just wanted to at least read the setup with you a little bit and comment on it just to get you started on the section. So he writes, this is the position about all vegetation that provides nourishment is permitted except for khamar, wine, and all other intoxicating beverages derived from juices that ferment and from honey itself. With respect to khamar, so this is the key word in question, and he's glossed it as wine, but let's leave open what it means exactly. They agreed, that is, all the jurists agreed, about its prohibition in small or large quantities. I mean, that which is derived from grape juice. So there's general agreement that any khamar that is derived, that is an intoxicant that's derived from grapes, is prohibited. So that all the jurists agree, whether it's small amount or large amount of grape wine. However, he goes on, in the case of the other intoxicating beverages, they disagreed about a small quantity that does not intoxicate. They agreed that the amount which intoxicates is prohibited. So in other words, among all the other jurists, everyone agrees that if you drink non-grape alcohol, let's just say, honey alcohol, for example, which they did drink in pre-Islam or in Arabia, that any amount that intoxicates, that gets you drunk, is prohibited. Everyone agrees about that. However, they disagreed about a small quantity that does not intoxicate, and this is where the rest of the discussion is going to take you. Um, the majority of the jurists of Hejaz, that is as well as the majority of the traditionists. By traditionists, they mean here the hadith transmitters, people who are collecting hadith. They're calling here the traditionists. And the jurists of Hejaz can mean either the very early jurists from the Arabian Peninsula who were giving judgments, or the later Malikis, because Malik ibn Anas, the founder of the school, was one of these jurists. So it can mean either, it depends on the context. They maintain that small and large quantities of intoxicating liquor are prohibited. The Iraqis, that is, again, the jurists of early Iraq, or the later Hanafis, Ibrahim al-Nakhai from the Taba'un, Sufyan al-Thawri, Ibn Abi Layla, Shuraik, Ibn Shabrama, Abu Hanifa, and all the remaining jurists of Kufa, as well as the majority of the jurists of Basra, so really the Iraqis, and again, the Iraqis or Hanafis, Abu Hanifa is listed here specifically, they maintained that what is prohibited in the remaining beverages, that is besides the grape wine, is intoxication itself, and not the substance of the beverages. So if you get the distinction here, what the Iraqis are saying is what's prohibited is being in a drunken state, not the substance of the alcohol. Whereas the Malikis and the jurists from the Hijaz are saying in any amount it's prohibited. So this is basically the setup, and the question is, on what basis did each school, essentially the Maliki school and the Hanafi school, get there? And that's what I want you to focus on. And while you focus on this, A couple of things are useful. When the text talks about the exalted with a capital E, says that's referring to God, and that's referring to the Quran. So look especially for Quranic phrases, which are it's in other words, you have to keep in mind that by the time you're at this stage of jurisprudence, you have the entire Quran memorized. So they'll sometimes just quote a couple of words, and that's meant to tip off the whole verse of the Quran. But essentially, there's a couple of key verses here, which they are going to quote verbatim in the beginning of the text, and then just a couple of words from after that apply directly to the issue of the issue of the prohibition of khamar. They're going to be kind of taking different views of the meaning of these verses. So I look forward to your discussions on this, and I'll follow up after I see some of them during the weekend. Thanks.